Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Pleased to have with me back on the show once again today, my friend Brad Wartman. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Well, hi, Angela. Thanks. Good to be back.
Good to have you back. And of course, Brad is always here at Real Film Snobs because he is our producer, editor, videographer, graphics, you name it, he does it. But he's also been on the show a few times as a host, and he's used to doing sci-fi because that's sort of the silo that I put him in on previous shows. But Brad said he was eager to try some other things. So I said, hey, let's do a whole episode with 2023 movies. We're starting to gear up for the beginning of Oscar/award season, where a lot of the movies that were at film festivals earlier in the year are now coming out to theaters. And so kind of an exciting time to get to review some new movies. So
Yeah,
Brad,
thanks for releasing me from sci-fi purgatory.
yeah, no problem. I thought you might enjoy a change of pace. Although maybe we'll see. Maybe depending on how you like these movies or not, you might be begging for some good old sci-fi classics once again when this
Yeah,
is over. Okay, so we're going to review all new 2023 movies. These are mostly movies that are in theaters or new to streaming. So we'll start with our first film, which was much buzzed about at the Telluride Film Festival. Ernie Quiroz, who was previously on the show, said it was one of the big hits at Telluride, and that is The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne, who some might know from his great films such as About Schmidt, Election, Nebraska, and of course Sideways. This film is set in 1970, and The Holdovers follows a curmudgeonly teacher played by none other than Paul Giamatti. Of course, who else? When you hear curmudgeonly teacher, who are you going to think of cast other than Paul Giamatti, who is forced to chaperone a handful of students at an exclusive private boys' school during the Christmas break. One student in particular, played by Dominic Sessa, gives him quite a bit of trouble. Also along for the ride is Divine Joy Randolph, who I loved previously in her performance in the Dolomite movie with Eddie Murphy as the head cook at the school, who is also left behind for the holidays. So this kind of quirky trio finds themselves, at this school where it's snowing and very isolated during the holiday season. And a lot of the things that you see here in the thematically are not anything new. We have the trio of outcasts who, while they at the beginning, can barely stand each other, sort of begrudgingly start to develop an affection for each other over the course of the holiday break, while some of their, some of the traumas that they've been through in their lives start to develop. What really makes this film work, a couple different things. One, we have some, great cinematography, kind of a beautiful place of setting. You really get the sense that they are at this private school on the East Coast. It's sort of set near the Boston area in Massachusetts. It has a wonderful sense of place with the corridors of this old school that's been around since like the 1700s. That is one of these schools. It's a preparatory school where young men are sent to go on to become senators and important lawyers and important people. And then you have these great performances by three wonderful actors, in particular Paul Giamatti, doing what Paul Giamatti does best. But I also have to give a shout out to Divine Joy Randolph, who I thought was maybe the heart and soul of the film. I thought her performance was particularly amazing. So I really enjoyed this film. I laughed a lot. I actually cried at the end. Call me a big softie, but I did. I'm curious to hear what you thought of it, Brad.
Well, of the four films we're reviewing today, this one was my favorite, and I really enjoyed it. As you say, Paul Giamatti does an excellent job, as does Divine Joy Randolph. For when I was watching it, the first, I call it the first act, I thought was a little stiffer than the rest of the film. Could be because it starts off and it's almost like the characters, which are all mainly the kids, are kind of just reading through their lines. They weren't. I didn't really get the sense that they had really gelled with the the movie yet. But as the movie went on, it got just better and better. And as you say, by the end, it was very touching, as you would
Hmm.
say. And I thought they just did a really good job of the film. It was very 80s. In fact, or in actually 70s, I think it was, right? Back
70s, yeah.
said in 70s. And that's interesting because a really good friend of mine, one of my roommates back in college, went to a school like this in Connecticut. And so I called him up to say, "Hey, I'm going to be watching this film. And I want you to watch it. I want you to tell me." And he watched it. He was like, "Hey, you remember when we went to visit, when you came out to visit, we went to the school I went to? It wasn't it just exactly like it was where I went to school at?" And I said, "Absolutely right." And he said, "I should have gone to Harvard." But uh,
So
but it was
he
really good.
felt like it was very authentic of
Oh,
that kind of
very
school in
authentic.
that
Very
period. Yeah.
authentic. Right, right,
Interesting.
right, right.
Yeah, and it
And
does a good job of bringing up these like class differences, racial differences, obviously. I do agree with you that the beginning, when there's more boys, which I won't give away the plot device where it becomes just the three of them, but there's originally a handful of boys left behind. And then eventually it's just the three of them, just the one boy, and then the two adults taking care of him. At first, I was a little skeptical of the casting of Dominic Sessa, the young man who plays Angus, the main student. He looks a bit old to be a
mhm,
junior in high school. They try to explain it away at some point, like maybe he's supposed to be a senior, like he's had so many disciplinary issues, he's been held back at least 1 year. He looks more like he's about 25, in my opinion.
yeah,
Partially because of his height, he's very tall, but he just his face and he just looks a little. He looks older than the other kids even that are supposed to be his age, and
right.
so. But I kind of tried to get past that because, let's face it, Dustin Hoffman was really old when he was playing a high school student in The Graduate. So Hollywood's been doing that for a long time. So I tried to look past that a little bit and just take the performances as they
Yeah.
were.
And I would say, I think that scene where the other kids leave in the helicopter, or they leave the campus, that's really where the movie I thought started to really
Take off.
come in, take off. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it becomes less of an ensemble movie at that point and lets you to really kind of drill down and focus on these three characters and really
right.
focus on their development. And one thing I have to say is that I feel like when this movie was set 1970, if this movie had been made, the Divine Joy Randolph character would have been a throwaway character 30 years ago. But
Hmm.
instead, she has a full character with a full character arc. Her own scenes. It's not just like, oh, we've put this token minority character in there. She's given her whole backstory and this things with her son and her husband and the tragedies that she's undergone. It also helps to put in perspective the two white male characters, kind of their trauma in perspective against
Yeah,
what she's gone through, and so they kind of always constantly reminds them, as sorry as they may feel for themselves, that they know that there's this woman by their side who's gone through a heck of a lot more than they have.
right.
And I liked how the film kept contrasting that throughout and
Yeah,
reminding us of that.
yeah. They're all three kind of damaged people in their
Right,
own way,
exactly.
and it's their own struggles. I am going to say there is one character who had just a brief part in the film, and that was the character Elise, that was played by Darby Lee Stack.
Uh-huh.
And when I saw her, first thing I thought was, she has got to be related to Scarlett Johansson in some way, because
uh
she looks just like her, almost
Which
like her,
character was
like to
she?
us,
Oh, the love it, the girl he meets at the party.
the girl that she meets at the party, right? But
Uh-huh.
she looked so much like Scarlett Johansson did in Lost in Translation, that I
Uh-huh.
was just like, wow, is that her sister, or a cousin
I
or
don't
something
think they're
like that? But
related.
no, they aren't related at all.
They
But
just look alike.
I just thought, wow, she
Yeah.
really looks like her. So anyway, who knows what'll
Yeah.
happen with that? But
So I can thoroughly recommend this movie. Especially it's a great
yeah,
holiday movie. I feel like you could take, the family. I mean, not really littles, but it's a,
yeah,
a good movie for everyone to enjoy,
yeah.
I think.
If you're looking for a counterpoint to all the stuff that's on Hallmark, this is a good one for you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we'll move on to the next one, which I think is yours.
Yeah, so the next film we're going to talk about is the Persian version, which is directed by Maryam Keshavarz, and this is kind of a this is a, is as she says, this is a reflection of the story of her life, and She is one of a member of a family who moved from or emigrated from Iran to the United States back in the like the early 70s. And the story starts out that so she is gay or lesbian, and she ends up having a one night stand with a guy who is playing a woman in a play, and
Hedwig
she
and the Angry Inch, which is very
Hedwig in the
important for her.
yes, thank you, Hedwig
Yes.
in the English, and she ends up getting pregnant. Well, so there is that arc of the story, and then there's another arc of the story that turns out to be the story of how her family came to live in the United States, and as it evolves, a hidden scandal that is around that surrounds her family. And to add another point to her dad, her father, who is a doctor, has had a heart attack and he's getting ready to have a heart transplant. So you've got these three arcs of the story that are going on with flashbacks back to the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then flashing forward into I'm not sure if it's the present day or if it, what quite the whatever the from the movies framework, the present time that they're
Mm-hmm.
working at. Uh, it's a good film. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. The only quibble I have about it is that it was kind of hard sometimes to realize when they're doing these time jumping sequences where they were at. It was,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to kind of watch it for a little bit before you kind of could place yourself in where this was in the storyline. But it was a good film and I really enjoyed it. How about you?
I did enjoy it. I liked it more than I actually thought I would, just because or when I first heard about this movie, it was getting described as, which is a bad moniker. It was being described as my big fat Greek wedding for Iranian Americans, and that makes it sound like it's going to be a lot sillier than it actually is. Silly in a bad way, like there's going to be a dad, drinking Windex or some silly stuff like that. I'm
Mhm.
not a fan of the Greek wedding movies, so I have to put that out there. This one has a lot more grit to it because you have the tension with her and her mother, which at the point we're kind of out in the sort of present day, they're basically not speaking anymore
Right.
because she blames her mother for the breakup of her marriage to a woman. Although it gets into as it goes on that there was more going on there that had to do with her really than her mother. Then, as you
Right.
mentioned, there's a lot of complications to the story because she gets pregnant from a man who is a cross-dresser but straight. So that's also complicated. So I liked how there was a lot of gender
And
fluidity in
English.
this movie. Yes, and English, which there's kind of an ongoing joke that everyone thinks he's gay because he has a British accent,
Yeah.
which actually did make me laugh out loud. And then all of her brothers, who all are these kind of wild type of different characters. And then her mother has this whole backstory that they go back and explore. And her mother's had all this trauma happened and all this, you know, you really see why her mother is the person she's become because she's had to fight so hard to get where she is. Her mother is this strong, independent, strong-willed woman and is actually has more in common with her daughter than we think. So I liked all those layers of kind of the family dynamic and nuance. Yes, it has some very campy parts and it's a little bit silly. And if you try to connect all the lines together, it doesn't quite all work 100%. It's not a 4-star movie, but it was a lot more enjoyable than I expected. And
Right.
I had a lot of fun. And I have to say, I thought the two lead performances, particularly the young woman, Layla Mohammadi, who plays the daughter, I thought she was quite good. And then the mother, Neosha Nior, who's an actress I've seen in other movies, just really great performances by those two. I think they kind of hold the movie together because there are so many other characters, but the brothers and the father are kind of more on the periphery. It's really these two women and their stories.
Right.
Um,
Right.
the director, you mentioned this is kind of biographical. She did a film in 2011 called Circumstance, which is absolutely terrific, which I recommend people seek out. It's hard to find. I actually watched it on Netflix DVD, RIP. Uh, it's much more serious than this film and really, really terrific. So see the Persian version and then see something she did earlier called Circumstance, which is a much
Mhm.
heavier movie. So yeah, but I can recommend this one. And it's another light one, so it's good. So there's a couple comedies
Yeah.
out in theaters right now,
And
so I seek them
and there's
out.
dancing.
Yes, and there's multiple dance sequences, which are a lot of fun.
Kind of
And this is another
Bollywood
one that
like,
there
you
would be
know?
no reason you could take the family to this one too. It's very light and another good, enjoyable, lighthearted
Yeah,
movie. So,
yeah, 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 yeah.
okay.
Okay. So we will then go on to the next film, which is Fingernails. And I'm sure that it would have been a good title to name this Fingernails Scraped Against Chalkboard, because I don't know. I could not get into this film. It
Interesting because it's the
is,
most sci-fi of all the films in a way. It's sort of
yeah,
sci-fi-ish.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking all night about how I'm going to talk about this movie.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Without
but
giving too much away, or
well, no, 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 no. Just subject matter.
okay.
So it's directed by Christos, Nikou, and it stars Jesse Buckley, Riz Ahmed, and Jeremy Allen White. But it also has in it, is it Luke Wilson? Is it Luke Wilson?
Luke Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, right, right. I can never keep them all straight. But the story is about, in some time frame, that a technology is introduced which claims that it can determine whether or not you're in love with somebody. And they do this. How do I say this? Yeah, there's no easy way to say this. They do this by ripping out your fingernails,
Mm-hmm.
and then they put them in a machine, and they then compare them. And you either are completely in love, you're 50% in love, which means one person is in love but not the other one, or it's 0%. And I'm going to say, Angela, is it probably 90+% of the time it comes out as zero.
Right.
But it's the story of this woman that's played by Jessie Buckley, who goes to work at this place called the Love Institute, and that's run by Luke Wilson. And she meets Riz Ahmed, who's one of the teachers there, and they have this program where people who think that they're in love uh, go through multiple events to kind of they call it to enhance their love. I think of it more of as a Pavlovian training response, but they do things like they put everybody into a movie theater and then they're going to yell fire because they want to see how the partners deal with each other during that.
Mm-hmm.
They have another one where they're in a plane and they're going to jump out and parachute. Now, tell me, and this is where it just kind of gets weird, because I mean, I'm all for doing stuff. I mean, I watched, Lobster, and I've seen some pretty strange stuff that was kind of interesting, but no jump instructor in their life would take two people who had never been in a parachute before, have never parachuted before, and as they shove them out the door, say, "Remember to pull the cord."
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even funny. And this whole subject idea about ripping out fingernails, just I don't know, I just could not get into it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Just,
I don't think it's a great film. The director, as you mentioned, he is part of the Greek New Wave, which, or they call it the Greek Weird Wave, which includes actually Yorgos Lanthimos, the director of The Lobster. His previous
mhm,
film, Apples, also showed at Salem Cinema and at art house theaters. I liked that film better. Interestingly, Apple's also kind of set in a sort of futuristic society where people have got memory loss,
mhm.
and it's kind of become a catching thing where people have sort of this amnesia like status. So he's very interested in these ideas of, but other than that, it looks exactly like our current world. In fact, I would say the technology that this computer where they put the fingernails in that analyzes them looks like a computer from like the 80s. It's just got this beep 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 beep
Well, it
beep,
looks like a
and then gives them a
microwave. It
proof.
just looks like a microwave oven,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Which, yeah, it's
I
not, it
looked
doesn't
at it and
seem very
I
high
went,
tech.
yeah. I was like, what in what, and the display that comes up is not some, you know
No,
fancy
it's not. It
graph or
doesn't
anything.
look fancy at
It
all.
looks
It's
like
just
something that is a cast off from an old Atari game or something,
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Which I thought was sort of a big kind of cheeky with it. What I
Yeah.
thought worked in the movie was Riz Ahmed and Jessie Buckley, who are both really terrific actors. I have actually felt they had good chemistry, and I thought the romance between them, that the kind of developing romance, was really intriguing. And this idea of someone you thought was your life partner, who's supposed to be quote unquote the perfect one for you. She's in this relationship with Jeremy Allen White, who people will know from The Bear, who I didn't think was very good in this movie, but there he is. He's the one that's all buzzed about these days, right? But I thought that was an intriguing premise. I think the film relies too heavily on the it's not even really the sci-fi, but the concept rather than leaning into the relationships, and that's where it goes wrong. I think if they had just explored this idea of the her, because I do think her and Riz Ahmed have really good chemistry in the movie, and I liked the developing romance with them. And
Hmm.
it's also interesting because they're both people that work for the company that does this
Right.
processing, and so they really believe in Love Connection is the name of the company, right? They really believe in this idea that you're either right or wrong for someone, rather than the idea, which I think is what the film's trying to get across, that these things can change and fluctuate, that there isn't maybe like one true soulmate, or that you can't depend on an algorithm to tell you if you're perfect for someone,
Hmm.
right? So which I think is all very obvious stuff. So I don't think it's a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. I think I liked it better than you. Partially, I just really like Jessie Buckley. I just think I could watch her in anything. I've
Hmm.
seen her in quite a few films now, and I really like her. But you're right. It's not. It's like a movie I think that seemed better on paper, maybe like when someone read the idea, like, oh, this seems like a cool idea, like a concept, rather
Hmm.
than what it became on the screen.
Yeah.
Um,
And I thought maybe the movie was some had some social was trying to do some social commentary about how we're always looking for ways to assess, our romantic relationships,
oh yeah, people
like
take those quizzes,
yeah, you go
like
on
in the old days,
Facebook and
and
you take the quiz to show, or
right.
Cosmo magazine or something like
Right,
that,
exactly. I was thinking of those from the old days
and I
of
thought, well,
Cosmo. They probably still have.
yeah, this is like taking that to the nth degree, right?
Right.
And I thought of that, but it just, yeah, I mean, I thought as you say, Jesse Buckley and Riz Ahmed had chemistry between them. The other two, but both her other partner, zero chemistry, and
No
maybe that was the
chemistry.
point. Even though they were supposed to be 100% compatible,
Right. They had no
there's just
chemistry.
they had no
Yeah.
chemistry at all.
Yeah,
So,
and that's another problem, is that you almost from the beginning you see it's going there. So it takes
mhm,
a long time to get to what I felt seemed inevitable, because I'm like, she obviously has chemistry more with this other guy. It's like apparent on the screen, right? That she has
right,
no chemistry with her
right,
live-in boyfriend. So
right,
so yeah,
right.
definitely not the greatest film in the world. So but it sounds like it's more of like a two-star movie for you, maybe, or even one star.
I'll give it a 1.834.
Okay, well, we don't have 0.834 on our website, as you know, but we'll go with 1.5. We can do
Yeah,
halves.
there we go
So,
with that.
okay. So we'll move on to another movie, which is also a comedy. So 3 out of the 4 movies we're reviewing today are comedies, which is actually really unusual, especially for Oscar season. It tends to be very dark movies this time of year. This one is called Quiz Lady, and it is about a game show obsessed woman played by Aquafina, one of my favorite current comedic actors out there, and her wild older sister, played by Sandra Oh, working together to cover their mother's gambling debts and also save their dog. um, this is a movie that shouldn't be as good as it is. I watched it, it's on streaming only. And my husband and I watched it. I needed a good laugh, and I laughed so hard during some of the sequences of this movie. I am a fan of both the lead actresses, so that helps. I love Aquafina. Some of you might know her from, of course, she was in The Farewell, was kind of her big breakout role. She's a comedic actress, and she's been in a lot of other things besides that, but that was kind of one of her big lead roles. Sandra Oh has been on TV forever and has been known for lots of shows like Grey's Anatomy and Killing Eve, but actually finally gets a good, juicy comedic performance to sink her teeth into. She's the older sister. There is quite a bit of an age difference between them, but I think they play it okay in the movie. Will Ferrell, who also produced the movie, is very funny as the host of the game show that Aquafina is a big fan of. And Jason Schwartzman, who plays the oily, kind of creepy guy on the show, and nobody plays oily and creepy better than Jason Schwartzman. So I thought he did a great job. I laughed a lot at this movie. It does have a very pat, kind of horrible ending that I didn't love. But I liked it up until we got to the ending. I really enjoyed it. There's some scenes that made me laugh so hard. about internet culture and social media when she finds her character is super introverted and her sister puts this clip of her online answering all the questions correctly without her knowing from the quiz show, and it goes viral. And there's these funny comments on Reddit that are just so on point when you see social media day in and day out, like I do for my job, that it made me really laugh out loud quite a few times. So
Right, right. And I felt kind of the same way. I mean, I didn't necessarily I didn't think that Sandra Oh and Aquafina had great chemistry, but Sandra Oh really did take her character over the top, you know.
mhm.
And Will Ferrell was he was a great there was Will Ferrell, and the name of the quiz show was it Can't Stop the
Oh gosh,
yeah.
can't remember
Anyway,
right now,
so
but
yes.
yeah,
Anyway, he has been the host of one of the themes of this is he has been the host of this show since Aquafina was a little girl. And so she
right.
would watch it. She watched it every day. And it's a live show. It's not a taped show. So
Uh-huh.
as well. And she has it to the point where she has her time, she has an alarm go off just to make sure that she watches the show. And as you say, and when Sandra Oh takes that video and puts it online and basically forces her to get onto the show. I just thought Will Ferrell played it so straight and so good,
Oh
and
yeah,
and the
he's
and
actually it's one of his best performances in a long time. I've missed
yeah,
seeing him on the
yeah,
big
and
screen.
that scene right at the end, which while the credits are starting to roll, I thought was just delightful with
Yeah.
the two of them,
Yeah, I
and
laughed a lot.
yeah, and then there was there was the character that played Ben Franklin.
Oh
Oh, so
yes,
they go
that
to Phil. They
actor.
end up going to Philadelphia, right?
Right.
And they
Yeah.
stay at the Ben Franklin Inn or something. Well, I mean, I've been to Philadelphia. And I just
Tony
that's
Hale,
worth
who's in
watching.
Arrested Development and Veep, and is another great comedic actor. There's just one of the
Yeah,
things they did right is they cast a lot of great character actors who are comedic actors. He is really funny in
yeah,
his scenes. He's playing Ben Franklin like he really thinks he's Ben Franklin,
yeah.
which just
In
again, and
character. Yeah.
yeah, and Holland Taylor, who's also in Arrested Development. So I don't know if it's like an Arrested Development reunion here. She plays her next door neighbor, who's an older woman who's obsessed with death and falling and constantly giving her a hard time, but also has sort of this weird affection for Aquafina's character. So,
And there's Paul Rubens. He's in the
yes,
film. And
Paul
his I think
Rubens
it
in his last performance. And we can't forget the dog, who is like a major, the pug dog, who is a major character. Linguini is his
yeah.
name, who is a major character in the movie as well, and gets a lot of laughs just on his own from being a dog. So if you're into pugs, another good reason to watch this movie. Lots of great sequences, including her sister gives her something to calm down when she's trying out for the quiz show, and it does a lot more than she was
Oh, and
expecting.
then
So she's totally looped
there's
out.
the abduction of the dog.
Right.
And because her mom is anyways running out, is like you said, she's run off to Macau and she has all these gambling debts
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
have to pay
Exactly.
back. So anyway,
So it's a lot of fun. Obviously, not a serious movie, but if you're in the mood for a good comedy, it's hard to make. There's very few movies that make me laugh that are out there. This one made me laugh, so I can recommend it. So,
I definitely recommend watching it after you've watched Fingernails.
yeah. Did you watch it in that order, Brad?
Yes.
Oh, good, good. So you needed a laugh. That's good.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on the show, Brad. It was awesome to have you. I don't want to anger our editor and go over. So, as always, thank you very much. Have a great day and great movies. Thanks for joining us.
Bye everybody.